It turns out the gray skies of a polluted city may not just be weighing down the skyline, they could be pressing in on your mind. In recent years, a growing body of research has begun to draw a sobering connection between air pollution and mental health, revealing that the smog hanging over urban life might be doing more than clogging lungs. It's clouding emotions, darkening moods, and in some cases, deepening despair. For millions living in dense cities around the world, the air they breathe could be an invisible but relentless force nudging them toward depression, anxiety, and even suicidal ideation. This is not just speculation or environmental doom-mongering. Multiple large-scale studies have now found statistically significant links between elevated levels of particulate matter, especially PM 2.5 and nitrogen dioxide, and increased risk of mood disorders. In one sweeping meta-analysis involving over 500,000 people across several countries, researchers found that even modest long-term exposure to air pollution was associated with a higher incidence of major depressive disorder. Notably, these correlations remained strong even after adjusting for confounding factors like income, employment status, and access to mental health care. Urban density appears to amplify the effect. Cities concentrate both pollution and people, which means larger populations are exposed to higher levels of airborne toxins day in and day out. In places like Delhi, Beijing, and parts of Los Angeles or London, daily pollution levels often exceed what's considered safe by the WHO, yet millions continue living, working, and commuting in these conditions. What they may not realize is that every breath taken in high-smog environments could be subtly rewiring the brain's emotional circuitry. The biological mechanism isn't mysterious. Fine particulate matter penetrates deep into the lungs, enters the bloodstream, and can cross into the brain either directly via the olfactory nerve or through a weakened blood-brain barrier. Once inside, it activates microglia, the brain's immune cells, which respond by releasing inflammatory chemicals. While inflammation is part of the body's normal defense system, chronic neuroinflammation can disrupt neurotransmitter signaling and impair neural plasticity. This, in turn, affects mood regulation, particularly in areas like the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, regions known to be involved in emotional processing and stress response. What makes this more disturbing is that these mood effects aren't just confined to those with pre-existing conditions. Healthy adults, teenagers, and even children show increased rates of anxiety, irritability, and sadness during periods of poor air quality. One recent study in the UK found that teenagers exposed to higher levels of NO2 and PM 2.5 were significantly more likely to develop symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder by the age of 18. And in South Korea, researchers observed that spikes in air pollution levels corresponded with a sharp rise in emergency psychiatric visits for depression-related symptoms, often within just days of exposure. Suicidal behavior, too, appears to be influenced by air quality. While no single factor can cause suicide, several studies have observed an unsettling pattern. As pollution levels rise, so do rates of suicide attempts, particularly in vulnerable populations. One explanation is that pollution exacerbates existing mental health struggles, lowers mood resilience, and increases impulsivity, all of which can tip someone over the edge in moments of crisis. And unlike other triggers, this one is ambient, persistent, and unavoidable. The mental health burden of air pollution is often invisible because it doesn't always show up in a single, dramatic event. Instead, it accumulates subtle shifts in energy, sleep, irritability, and hopelessness that get shrugged off as stress or burnout. But when those symptoms are mirrored in millions of people across the world's most polluted cities, the pattern becomes undeniable. Smog isn't just a public health issue, it's a psychological one. And yet, mental health is rarely part of the environmental policy conversation. We talk about asthma, cancer risk, and climate, but less often about depression, panic attacks, or the creeping existential dread that might follow a week of gray, suffocating air. That needs to change, because as the research becomes clearer, so does the ethical imperative. We cannot afford to separate emotional well-being from environmental safety. Cleaner air is not just a luxury for the physically frail, it is a vital resource for emotional stability and psychological resilience. Reducing pollution isn't just about saving lives. It's about improving how we live, how we think, and how we feel every day. Because right now, the mood of our cities may be quietly poisoned by the very air we depend on, one invisible particle at a time.